This is one of their mobile kitchens that they actually...
Is that even some, what I call habitual...
Beautiful Stop and Shop in the Wilton penalty, but it was actually a tax, and that it... Absolutely. What's the name of the show? Good evening and welcome again to the Marty Heiser Show. I don't know, but in January and February when it's cold and rainy and snowy and wet and you know your furnace is crying, you just feel like why do I live in the Northeast? But when you have had days like we've had the past couple days where spring is blooming, okay, the tornadoes came through, that wasn't good, but still these are beautiful days. It makes you happy that you live specifically in the Northeast, but more focus here in Connecticut. And there's institutions here in Connecticut, Quinnipiac College, Yale University, many, many others, some of which are right here in our backyard in Danbury, Connecticut, and that's the Ansel School of Business. And we are honored to have the Dean David Martin of the Ansel School of Business joining us this evening.
My pleasure.
And to tell us a little bit about the school, to tell us a little bit about where the economy is going in Connecticut, and to just generally speaking make us feel better about ourselves. That's your quest for this evening.
I got it.
But thank you so much. But let me just let me build you up a little bit. You went to Long Island University. That was at Post School. Right. Then you went to Western Illinois, where you got your MBA, and you got your PhD at St. Louis University in the Midwest. Mm-hmm. And then you were the dean of the school, St. John Fisher.
Right.
And that was in Rochester, New York.
Yep.
And then they did a worldwide search. They looked far and wide for who would be the next dean of the Ansel School of Business, and you came out on top.
I think I was the only one who applied. I think that's how that happened.
That's not true. It's not true. They didn't like put an ad in Craigslist looking for a business school dean, fill in here. No. I know how these things go. When you're looking for a dean.
I do know I had to pass 2 background checks.
Really?
The search firm conducted one. Headhunter called me up and said, "You're really boring."
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I said,
hobbies.
Well,
I love to read history.
Yeah. So, and then after the offer was made, the state, of course, did its own background check and found me just as boring. So.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess
terrible.
Boring could be good. Now, if you join one of these fancy schmancy country clubs, sometimes a member has to come to your house for tea or something, just to have them have a look around. Did anything like that happen in the interview process?
No, I had a evening and a day at WestCon, and I was a little familiar with it, so I didn't need much. Well, being born and raised in Connecticut, so I was familiar.
That helped.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. We were talking a little bit. There was a court case this past week, which captivated everyone's attention. A 30-year-old who would not get out of mom's basement, literally, and mom and dad had to sue him to get him out. Right. And sometimes us aging guys like myself, look at the up-and-coming college students and some going into grad school, and we think, oh, they don't know how rough it is out here. But that hasn't been your experience.
No.
What is the average student that goes into the Ansel School of Business? What are their aspirations? What are they doing? And why are you so optimistic about it?
Well, first of all, we have about 45% of our students are first gen. So nobody in their family went to college before them.
Oh, really? 45%?
45%, which is, in this day and age, is pretty high.
That's right. That's
24% are Hispanic or self-identified as Hispanic.
Excellent.
13% African American. So these are people who are really leading the way for their families.
That's fantastic.
So their expectations are a lot different than, let's say, somebody who's going to Fairfield or Sacred Heart in Lower Fairfield County, whose mom and dad also graduated from college and have been through the university systems and know how to play the game and how to go along, get along, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
These folks are just coming in, they say, we want to come in, learn what we have to learn. They don't live on campus. They're commuters. They have families they're caring for. They have jobs. As I told you previously, we have seniors. Our average senior in the Ansel School of Business works 30 hours a week besides being a full-time student, taking 15 credit hours, which translates to 15 in the classroom, but about 45 overall.
Plus holding down a 30-hour a week job.
Yeah.
So these aren't pampered trust fund kids coming
all.
up from Darien, Connecticut.
Yeah, and we don't hear the term snowflake on campus.
Yeah.
It's just not there.
It's okay. So there aren't any 30-year-olds living in their basement that they got to get
No.
a court order to come out of their parents' basement.
Right, not at all. These are hardworking people. And I talk to people who hire our students for internships or for entry-level jobs, and they all tell me, your kids work hard. Yeah. One, in fact, told me that he had a young man from Yale that they hired and a young man from WestCon, and he said, yours is much better.
Wow.
Because they don't feel entitled, they go to work, they want to do a good job, they want to build their careers, they know what it means to work. I'll tell you what, we're very proud of them. They're good kids.
So if you have a student that comes into your school, what are 2 or 3 things that you want to make sure you're instilling in them so that when they come out and they hold on to that diploma that they have and they go out into the work world, it's a reflection of your school and the training that they get? What are 2 or 3 top things that you want to do?
Well, important things are, first of all, to work hard. So they come with that, but we reinforce that along the way. Secondly, in education, people talk about knowledge, and knowledge is important. But what we find in the workplace, the employers are saying knowledge is necessary, but it is not sufficient. So they need to develop their skill sets. They need to be able to communicate effectively in both oral and written manners. They need to think critically, and we evaluate them on that ability to think critically. They need to work in teams and to be effective teammates, because the world out there, when I started in the industrial environment, you were mostly working alone. You didn't have many kumbaya meetings or things of that. There weren't really team approaches. Everybody was individually assessed and everything. Nowadays out there, even in the firms you wouldn't think would be like that, such as the accounting firms, there is much more team-based work.
It's an open format, open office format, and there's a lot of collaboration.
Right, so that collaboration is important for us to instill in students how to do that. We've started with a new product this year, which actually allows the students to virtually rate themselves in their teams. And as a consequence, what we're finding is that social loafing, well, there's 5 of us in the team, so I'll just kind of hang back and let whoever wants to get the A do all the work.
Yeah.
With this rating system, you can't do that.
Okay.
So it's really good for us. It's good for the student.
Yeah. By the way, the phone number here is 203-438-2003. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to call in. My guest this evening is Dr. David Martin, the Dean of the Ansel School of Business, right here in WestCon on the Danbury campus. You studied history. It sounds like that was a passion of yours.
Still is.
And so, what period of history are you most interested in?
I'm very much interested nowadays in World War II military history.
Okay.
I just find it fascinating how generals and admirals can move things around on a map, and how that affects the lives of so many different people.
Wow.
And so I'm fascinated by World War II magazine, which I read as soon as it comes. It's read. But also histories. I'm reading a biography of Truman by McCullough.
Oh, yeah.
McCullough, yeah, it's wonderful. He's a great biographer. He's a great storyteller.
Yeah.
And I had the pleasure of meeting him one time at St. John
Truman
Fisher.
or McCullough?
McCullough, yeah. Yeah. But Yeah, he gave a commencement address, which was the best commencement address I ever saw. Students rose and gave him a standing ovation.
Wow.
And I got to talk with him afterwards. He's a very inspiring man, very bright man.
Yeah.
So articulate.
Yeah, that book, that McCullough book, I actually did read it, and talks about Truman. He didn't finish college.
Right.
He ran an election to become a judge,
Right.
which people didn't really completely understand. And then there was the Pendergrass syndicate out in the Midwest.
The Democratic machine.
Yeah, and he was a product of that, but he never shied away from it. He even went to Pendergrass' funeral when they thought maybe it would have been better to not. And he was the accidental president because FDR kind of brought him along and said, all right, we need some help in the Midwest, we'll make Truman president. And then all of a sudden FDR ends up dying on him, and he finds out he's president.
And he found out what we were doing.
Yeah, the Manhattan Project and stuff
all
like that.
Absolutely.
But he knew that it was going to cost 1 million soldiers to invade, based on some of the other islands in the South Pacific.
Iwo Jima and Okinawa both were total disasters from a manpower standpoint.
Yeah.
We lost 50,000 killed at least on both islands, and they knew that when they invaded, and they would have to invade successive islands, that the Japanese were just going to go to the bitter end.
Yeah.
And so dropping the bomb saved a lot of lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, that was
on both sides.
You're right.
Yeah.
And then MacArthur comes in there and establishes, gives women's suffrage, and does the right thing with the emperor. And yet, him and Truman and MacArthur, who should have been best of friends historically, had a falling out.
Yeah. Well, MacArthur had a high opinion of himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some would say justified.
When he left the Philippines, he said, they should issue a statement that I shall return.
Right.
And the Army press said we thought it might sound better, we shall return. And MacArthur was like, No, I think we'll go with I shall return.
Yeah. He had a very large ego.
Yeah.
And but he had been a very successful general up to that, so it was somewhat earned. And he was very for all of it. He was probably one of the more restrained in having losses. He didn't have many resources. He could afford to lose large bodies of men because he didn't have them.
Yeah.
And he was over vast territories that were not contiguous, so there was a lot of water he had to deal with. And so all in all, he did a pretty good job. I was just out in Hawaii a few weeks ago.
Before or after the volcano?
The volcano was starting at that time because they were having rumblings, but I was on the island of Oahu where Pearl Harbor is, and so we weren't feeling any of that.
Okay.
We didn't even know what was going on. But so we went to Pearl Harbor, and it was very interesting in Pearl Harbor because they have the Arizona Memorial, so we went out to see that. And then just 1,000 yards away is the Missouri.
Yeah.
So for us, it's basically where the World War II started for us, with the bombing and sinking of the Arizona and other battleships, and also where the peace treaty was signed. The surrender document was on the Missouri in Tokyo Bay, and they have a plaque on it where the treaty was actually signed on the Missouri.
Wow!
So it was great, and I loved going through that ship. Got to see a lot of it.
Yeah, that was a lot of history because they had some of the POWs that were released were there at the signing.
Right.
They were survivors of the Bataan Death March.
Percival and Wainwright.
Yeah, was that? Yeah. Anyway, all right, we digress.
So we digress.
But you're from a business education perspective, you don't want autotoms that are out there that are just regurgitating, okay, this is how you do end of year statement, this is how you do profit loss, this is how you do inventory. You want people like you're just have a breadth of knowledge and understanding of history and are able to adapt in an ever-changing marketplace. Don't only put words in your mouth.
No, and it's not even my words, it's the words of the employers out there and what they need. You have to look at what I do in education, collegiate education, as a product. So I need to be attuned to what the employers out there are saying.
Yeah.
They need
What
to be
are they
successful.
saying? What do they
Well,
want?
they want students who are, first of all, they want them working hard. They want them showing up. They want them to say, rather than, what are you going to do for me? What can I do for you?
Yeah.
Secondly, they need people who are going to be able to work effectively collaboratively with others. So again, this old competitive model that you and I may have experienced in our youth.
Work your way up the ladder.
Work your way up the ladder
Yeah.
is not the way it goes. What you do today is you work together in teams, and the teams can formulate. One day you'll be one team, another day you'll be on other teams. So they want that ability to get people to work together that way. They want creativity. And that's really a unique thing. It's difficult for us in business schools to teach it directly.
Yeah.
But creativity in terms of approaches, which means good critical thinking skills and good communication skills, and the ability to work together in a way that you don't necessarily criticize, but that you work together to improve ideas. You know, I've been through many exercises where you go through and say, we're going to brainstorm here. We're not going to criticize anything in the brainstorming.
Yeah, there are no bad ideas.
No
Just
bad
let 'em
ideas.
fly.
So let them fly.
Right.
And if you do that, then what happens is after a while you begin to see what the bad ideas are, but that's okay.
Yeah.
The people who generate the bad ideas tend to see what the bad ideas are.
Yeah.
And so they say, yeah, that we can move that one off the board and we'll go do something
But I
else.
like that. I
Yeah.
mean, you can, it's paralysis by analysis
Right.
if you don't. I like the ready, fire, aim
Right.
kind of
Yeah,
approach.
yeah.
You can't steer a parked car kind
Right.
of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's make some mistakes. Let's go. I love business biographies. Like you look at Ray Kroc.
Right,
he
yeah.
came in. There was that movie. I think it was called The Founder. It was out a
Right,
couple
yeah.
of years. It captures it. And there he's taking the hamburger. And he's seeing how they're mass producing it, and he's saying, let's try something new. Let's try the drive-through. Let's,
Right.
Work.
One of the things that I do, I teach a class in Principles of Finance every semester. That keeps me really in touch with students.
All right.
I love it. So, but one of the things I decided to do was to take the series, The Men Who Built America, which is done by the History Channel.
So you got
And-
Ford.
Ford.
You got Rockefeller.
Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, who's my personal hero.
Okay.
There's Carnegie. So these are the big giants of their age,
Right.
and Vanderbilt's in there as well. But when you look at it and you say, what is it that these folks did? And besides create tremendous wealth, what they did was they were entrepreneurial. Rockefeller figured out how to take oil that he was refining in Cleveland that came from Pennsylvania and get it to the markets in New York as kerosene cheaper than his competitors.
Yeah.
And phenomenal what he was able to do.
The
And-
invention of the internal combustion engine didn't hurt too.
Well, that
was
helped.
pretty good timing because they were making
Yeah.
oil for lamps,
Right,
and then
yeah.
they go, "Wait, you don't need them just to, read by. You're going to put it in that thing, and it's going to move people." And the demand went
Yeah.
up a smidge.
Just a smidge, because gasoline was a byproduct of kerosene.
Yeah.
And they didn't know what the heck
Oh,
to
yeah,
do with
they
it.
poured out in the
so
field.
eventually somebody said, well, let's build this internal combustion engine and we can use this
Yeah.
byproduct, which was relatively cheap at the time. I wish you could get a little cheaper nowadays.
But again, there's your
Right.
creativity,
Yep.
there's your entrepreneurial, so
Right.
there's your thinking outside the box. When you can come up with things, and that's what moves things ahead.
But look at today in the information technology field, and that the exact same thing has happened. We have had people such as Gates, such as Steve Jobs at Apple, such as and they were heads of companies, but Zuckerberg and all of the social media, they all have and Steve Bezos at Amazon,
Yeah.
they have fulfilled a need. And they have seen how to create a different product and anticipate that customers would have that need. You have your phone there.
Yeah.
I didn't have phones like that, right? When
Yeah.
I was a kid, we had something stuck to a wall,
Yeah.
and we didn't have pictures
In the
on
kitchen
it.
with a
Yeah,
big
right,
long cord, you know, and numbers for the pizza delivery guy written on the wallpaper next to it.
Yeah, I remember my dad. We tried to get him a push-button phone, and he just wouldn't use it. He had to use the rotary dial phone on the kitchen wall because that's what he was used to and everything.
Yeah.
But today, we have more computing power in our phones than they did on Apollo 13 when it went to the moon and had the explosion and came back.
Yeah.
We have more of that in our hands.
But what
today.
you're talking about here in all these instances is the benefits of a free market, open,
Absolutely.
dare I say, democratic society and economy,
Right.
where you're allowed to flourish.
Yeah. And the thing is that, and one thing I do fault our political structure for is they think that they can envision the future better than some person working in their basement.
Yeah.
We have a gentleman from Newtown who started a company here. We honored him as Entrepreneur of the Year 2 years ago. And in his basement, he started a company which what he does now is provide cloud services. So he has a bank of computers all over the country, all over the world now, and to small and medium-sized companies that can't create those cloud services for themselves. They're too small. They would have to have too many people. He does it. He's built up over $1 billion company based in Norwalk, Connecticut.
Wow.
So just phenomenal. He went to one of his professors. He was at the Rochester Institute of Technology and said, I've got this idea. What do you think about it? The professor said it would never go. And he tells that story. And now, you know, I'm sure that, by the way, he is on the board of trustees at Rochester Institute of
is he really?
Technology. Yes. So they recognized eventually that he knew what he was doing.
I guess he gets to review that particular professor that said, I've heard the same story, and you might know it better, but with FedEx, right? Was it the Smith?
Yeah.
Same thing. He, as his final for his MBA, he presented the business plan for Federal Express. I think he got like a C- on it or something like that. Like, wow, he didn't allow for this and all that.
Yeah.
And FedEx seemed to have taken hold.
Well, I think so. You know, it's.
All right, let me just bring it back to Connecticut economy.
Okay.
And what we're looking at here in Connecticut specifically, across the country. I mean, it seems like business optimism is up, unemployment is down.
Oh, wow.
In 14 states, it's at historically low levels. They've never seen it that low.
Right.
They've never seen as low African American unemployment,
Right.
Hispanic unemployment. The stock market seems to be churning along. Manufacturing seems to be, going up. So it seems like there's a lot of positive things across the country. But when you look to Connecticut, and we talked a little bit about this, Hartford and some of the constraints that they deal with. What's the problem with Connecticut economy? Is it as bad as people make it out for political purposes? And what are the remedies that you see?
Well, I do think that in Connecticut now, the legislature and the governor have created a situation over time, more than one governor, more than one legislature, over time where the state's finances are not in very good shape. And that's just a reality of life right now. That has created an atmosphere of constant turmoil and constant uncertainty for businesses in how are they going to get the money they need to fund the state. And that's a big problem because businesses don't like uncertainty.
Right.
Nobody does, but businesses in particular. And when they see that kind of turmoil in the state, for example, there's been discussion about re-tolling all of the roads, or in fact putting tolls for the first time on all the roads. And the technology is there. You can do it, high-speed cameras and all this sort of stuff, easy pass, whatever. But the reality is that that's there, and if you got a business that depends on freight,
right,
that's going to be very expensive. So people
so
are
when you
going to
talk
be
about
reticent.
Connecticut being one of the most business unfriendly states, that would be an example.
That
Even
would
to have it as a proposal in the legislature. It did get voted down, this last time, but even that it's in play, when they're looking to expand or move, they shy away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I think you have to then look at other factors, local regulations, the expense of living here. And you compare that to other places in the country, down south in Texas, places like that, it's very difficult.
But let's go to the positive side. Connecticut, like they say, we did lose 2 large companies, Aetna and GE. By the way, when I'm watching the NBA, playoffs, and you got the Boston Celtics, they got the GE logo right there, and I'm like, those sons of guns, they stole that company from us. Aetna's been here 124 years. They finally throw out the white flag and say, I've had enough. But there's still many 12 other, Fortune 500 companies that have their headquarters here. We talked a little bit about the military budget that was just spent, just passed 20% increase in revenue for Sikorsky and electric boats. So we still make helicopters and submarines here, which are world class. Is there hope, because it's got an educated workforce, it's got some of the most beautiful suburbs you can imagine, there's history here. Are you optimistic that we can turn the corner if we get things straightened out in Hartford?
If we get things straightened out in Hartford, yes. But the key is going to be a different approach, I think. And that approach is to lower taxes, not increase them.
Imagine that.
Yeah, it seems to work every time it's tried.
Yeah.
And what happens is you create economic activity by that. And the government is poor at creating economic activity. When I was in New York State, and Governor Cuomo, the son, came out and said, oh, we're going to create all these jobs. We're going to give people new companies.
I saw the TV commercials.
Yeah. Trust me, they did not succeed. The amount of money they spent per job was some astronomical amount. You would have been better off just giving people money. And that's because, again, it's very difficult for government to pick winners and losers. When it does, it doesn't do a very good job because we don't know who the winners and losers are. So I've always believed in lower taxes, lower taxes, and lower taxes, create economic activity. From that, if you tax that at a reasonable rate, you will get an increase in revenues. And then you can use those revenues to do the type of social programming that you believe in, be it transportation, be it education, or whatever. I would also throw in here, and because we're a state without any county governments, and we're unique in that, we tend not to get individual solutions to problems. And when you're in a large state and you have many county governments, you're going to get different, some counties are not going to spend a lot on education, other counties are going to spend more. Here in Connecticut, we try to level load that as much as possible, and I understand why, for the interest of fairness to all. But what happens is that, wealthy communities are always going to be able to go around that. They'll invest in their schools. They're going to make sure that private schools are available, et cetera. But the poorer communities, and let's look at where our poorer communities such as Hartford, that's really a disaster, Bridgeport disaster. We have educational issues, and we're not going to be able to solve it even with money. So we have to take some different approaches, and lower taxes create economic activity. And that also will pull people away, I think, from the drug issues that we have in the state, because they are phenomenal, and it's going to be very difficult. But if people don't have jobs to go to, all right, and it's going to be very, very tough.
A well-paying job in the private sector is the best social program, I think.
Right, and this is from somebody who has a well-paying job in the public sector.
Yeah,
so I want everyone to understand.
No,
that.
Just the dignity of having a job.
Dignity of having a job.
Go full circle back to that 30-year-old living in the basement that the parents had to get evicted.
I don't know why they waited so long.
Right. I want to bring in Dave Straight. He's the co-host of the show. He's got questions about the economy and on like a macro level. And we want to pick your brain. We don't have geniuses
Won't
in
take
here
long.
all that long. But we've been looking at some of the, on the national level, manufacturing jobs are up. And by the way, on the taxes that you're talking about, if you go back to the Reagan years, don't let me put words in your mouth, because I've heard, but he lowered taxes, lowered the tax rates, yet revenue to the government doubled over the course of the year. Is that accurate, what I just said?
That is accurate. Spending also increased tremendously.
That's true too. But the concept of lowering taxes, and it will mean more money because you increase economic economic activity.
Right.
That's something I think sometimes lost on politicians.
Right.
But
It's derided as the Laffer curve,
right.
but it actually works.
It does work.
Yeah, Arthur Laffer
And you are
was
a
correct.
dean of a business school.
Yes.
You're not a raving right-wing Republican guy with the Trump bumper
I d-
sticker.
No, I
Let's
don't
stay
have
out of
one of those.
politics. But I'm saying this is academically speaking, what I just said is accurate.
Yeah, it is accurate.
There you go. I'm going to use that. Dave, do you have a question for this incredible economic mind that we have among us?
Well, Marty, the last time I went to see the dean in high school, it wasn't a good thing.
Really?
So I'm a little nervous here tonight.
This is a business school from the
I've been there myself,
Anchel School of Business.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I'd say is, when I heard
By the
that,
time you get there, your discipline problem
when I
should
heard
be
the
behind you.
janitor canceled on your show tonight, I knew I had a chance of coming on. So I appreciate that. You always
Wasn't
leave
the
the door
janitor,
open for you.
was it
Okay, so let's on a big picture perspective, which part of the globe right now has the best regional growth?
Oh, that's a great question. Let me think for a
He didn't say this was going to be on the final. We didn't say that.
Yeah.
Which part of the globe has the best regional growth?
growth.
I would say Canada, Mexico, and America. NAFTA.
Yeah.
I'm asking him.
Okay, sorry.
He's the business
no,
guy.
I would go with that as well. Europe, I think, is will be for a long time, and China is struggling a little bit right now. So I would say us.
Do you have the answer to this question?
No, that's why I came here to have my
Well, you
questions
can't ask a
answered.
question if you don't have the
I
answer. There's
think-
no
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not an
that.
attorney, okay?
I think our revival is really doing very well for
Well,
North
when
America.
and you and I talked about this on the phone. When a locomotive starts out, it starts by kind of going in reverse a little bit, so everything can lock up, and then it starts going forward. And it takes a long time. When the engines hit full throttle, it takes a long time before you even see the locomotion, any motion forward. But once it gets going, you can't stop it.
Right.
And I think when you think about repatriating $4 trillion from Europe and bringing it to the U.S.,
Yes.
when you think about finally having a competitive corporate tax structure, when you think about having potentially a reasonable rule of law, with the exception of the Department of Justice and the FBI, you look and you say, Cargill used to have a saying, business goes where it's invited and stays where it's welcome. I tend to agree with that. So right now, you've got this big old welcome mat for America, and my prediction was that over the next 7 years, and again, we'll say politics aside, there's a very real chance that we see the trade deficit shrink from somewhere around $50 billion a month right now, maybe to zero, because the U.S. is about to become the biggest oil exporting country on the planet.
Yes.
And we are on the verge of a manufacturing renaissance in this country that's going to make us competitive globally.
Right.
It's really, really fascinating to watch. So,
I'm feeling good.
Yeah, so
Memorial
let me-
Day weekend's coming up. You're saying everything's great. I feel like getting a case of Coronas.
there's also a lot of discussion over the past few years about the oil trade getting off of the dollar, going to the euro and the yen. Is that going to any impact, or does that matter at all?
No, the dollar. Yeah, I don't know why they would do that. The dollar is the commodity.
So how much longer do you think that the U.S. dollar will be the reserve currency?
Definitely my lifetime. And then after that, I won't much care.
That's probably a pretty good answer. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it doesn't make sense to me that we have what's the number in America? 350 million people in America, and in China has somewhere around 1.3 billion, somewhere thereabouts. It doesn't make sense long. The UK used to be the reserve currency, right? In the early part of maybe 1940 or I don't know, somewhere in there it rolled over.
Right.
But it didn't make sense for the Brits to have the reserve currency when they were such a small entity. And it doesn't make sense for the U.S., in my opinion, long term, for the U.S. to remain the reserve currency when China's 4 times our size. Now we have a much more robust economy,
Yeah.
and at some point it'll probably shift. But with the state of the Chinese economy right now, probably not anytime soon.
I first of all agree with that. I don't think the Chinese, as long as the government structure there remains, I don't think people are going to feel comfortable with that being the reserve currency. Because being dictatorial, their policies can change on a dime, and they can use that advantageously for themselves. We're not as in terms of our currency, we're not that dictatorial, and we do move in concert with other countries. So everybody's understanding where we are. I think oil is the biggest commodity that's priced in dollars, and it's going to remain priced in dollars.
So switching gears for a second, what do you think the negative impacts are of technology on students that you see in college right now?
This is a very specific question.
Well, I'll give you an example. I'll lead the witness.
Great question.
I'll lead the witness.
Okay.
In talking to some friends of mine that work at Fortune 500 companies, they say that they're taking, they only hire 3.5 GPAs or higher.
Right.
They bring them in, and the first thing they do is they put them in an English and communications class for the first year.
Right.
That's what he was talking, because they didn't go to the Ansel School of Business.
Right.
If they had, due to this dean, they emphasize reading and writing. You got to be able to communicate.
See, if I was going to advise anyone today in terms of what to do professionally, I'd advise them to be like a thumb orthopedic surgeon, or like do nose repair, because people are doing this and walking into buildings. But there have to be negative effects. I'll give you an example. We interviewed a person a couple of weeks ago, and we said, "Hey, how do you do in math?" And she goes, "I don't know. I got a calculator." So they don't. Their brain doesn't function quite the way. Well, actually, I don't know how well my
Ansel School of Business graduate, was he that you interviewed there?
Probably
They're
not.
much
yes.
more impressive.
Yeah.
No, but don't you think that spell check and abbreviations and text messaging have an adverse effect on the way kids communicate?
I think what has an adverse effect is texting, and because they text, and I do too when I text. I don't text,
Complete thoughts.
complete thoughts, complete sentences, because I'm punching and I'm trying to get it communicating as quickly as possible. That we can solve in higher ed, and I encourage my faculty to do that. I do that in the course I teach, and I want them to do essay questions. I want them to write. I want them to think about things. My favorite essay question is a historical one, but over 5 factors to take 2 Connecticut natives, Samuel Colt and J.P. Morgan, who are buried 150 feet apart in Hartford at Cedar Hill Cemetery.
Wow.
I have pictures of it.
Okay.
So, but they're buried there, and I asked them to compare and contrast. That's a great critical thinking question. The problem is they don't know how to compare and contrast. They know how to list things, but they don't know how to compare and contrast. So it's not the technology's problem, it's that we're not asking them to do those sorts of things.
It's interesting when they, speaking J.P. Morgan, I believe he taught Sunday school, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
I think he did. Pretty decent fellow. And when the government came in and broke up the J.P. Morgan Trust, oil trust, everybody got richer, which is kind of interesting. The government thought, we're going to take care of him, and he got on the wrong side of people. Wasn't he also financing Nikola Tesla?
Yes, for a little bit there, yeah. It was mostly Westinghouse who was doing it, but Morgan got involved. Morgan got involved in everything. So Morgan was not opposed to taking things over, creating really strong companies and whatever he had to do. It's all about that. He was the most effective financier we've ever had in our country.
So let me ask another thing. We've seen the rise of Google. We've seen the rise of Apple and Amazon and Facebook. Do they pose a threat to capitalism? Do they pose a threat to democracy? Should we let them go? What would you do with them?
I'd let them go. I don't think they pose a threat at all, because as long as people want them, unless they go out and actually corral people and say you have to use my product, my view is let them go. They can, they're going to be beaten someday in the market. So I always believe in, as long as markets are relatively free, that somebody sitting in a basement, or maybe a 30-year-old sitting in his mom's basement, comes up with a great idea and figures out before the eviction notices, out of pure desperation, right? And so I've got to do something now. That individual will come up with a way to it isn't so much the competition. I'm out there to beat you. I got a great idea. I think people will buy it. I want to put it in the market.
Well, a good reflection of the business cycle and how the the cycle has accelerated over the course of the last 50 years or whatever, is that I think there's only one company on the Dow that's been on there for like 100 years, isn't it? I think it's GE.
GE?
Yeah, I think that's the only. Look at how they're not really doing so good. The share prices are down to 14.
They're actually not doing very well at all.
Right,
They should have
right.
never left Connecticut.
Well,
They got forced out, just
I know.
for what it's worth, and we're going to see more of that. But then you look at the average length of time now that companies are spending, like in the S&P 500 or on the Dow. I mean, you're down to like 15 or 20 years. That's the average. So it's really, really, really shortened, which means that, to your point, Google's a voluntary. You don't have to use Google. It's voluntary. You don't have to use Apple products, which I haven't caught on to Apple products at all yet. I don't understand the phenomenon or the craze, but it's like
You're showing your
addiction.
age. You probably have an AOL email account too.
Well, Galaxy, a Galaxy phone, like an
They
S6
laugh at
is
it if you have an
phenomenal.
AOL account.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you so much for coming
Thank
in.
you.
I really appreciate it.
My
The
pleasure.
Ansell School of Business right here in Westcon. It's a gem right in our backyard, and it's a great place if you want to continue your education.
Absolutely.
Our guest has been Dr. David Martin, the dean of said school, and we just appreciate you, enhancing the community
It's
as a
been
whole.
fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, now next up, we're going to go to raw red meat politics. That's right. Are there spies spying on Donald Trump in his campaign for public office? Was the Obama administration corrupt to the core? We know they used the IRS against anyone that claimed to have Patriot in their name or Tea Party in their name. We know that because it was adjudicated in a court of law, and the IRS ended up having to give money away to some 120 groups that were violated their First Amendment rights. So we know that. Now we're finding out that there were spies in the Trump campaign. They're saying, no, that couldn't be. Well, guess what? It did happen. We know that because Clapper and Brennan and all of them are copying to it, because there's going to be a 400-page IG report. I mean, the irony of this is just incredible. When Donald Trump says what goes around comes around, I think he's onto something, because they wanted a special counsel to investigate Russian collusion in the Trump campaign, because how else can we explain why everyone didn't bow down to Sir Madam Oven Mitt, Hillary Clinton, and vote for her? Why didn't they just understand her brilliance, the most qualified person to be president? Why did they were repulsed by her corruption and everything else? Why? Well, and now we should ask the next caller why that is. But we're finding out that the Obama FBI and CIA actually had spies in the Trump campaign, spying on an opposing candidate from an opposing political party. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And I love their explanation. There was no spying. There was no spy. You cannot release the name of that guy that wasn't spying because his life could be at risk. But there was no spying, but don't release the name of the person we're saying that wasn't spying. You follow this? Yeah, I don't either. Caller, where do we got this wrong?
Marty, it's really hard to believe the stuff that you come up with. The next thing you're going to tell me is that Bigfoot was involved with Trump's campaign. I mean, you guys will just come up with anything. And Marty, when they insult your intelligence, doesn't this bother you? I mean, why aren't you talking about the extreme weather that we had instead of some phony spy story? I mean, we just had a 1 in 500 year storm. Why? Because of global warming. But will you talk about that?
I think we should. Another proof of global warming is that drought they're having in California. That, again, proves that there's global warming. I'm sorry, there's a flood in California, which, again, extreme weather proves that there's global warming. Hold on. The Arctic ice caps are expanding, and that proves that there's global warming because... I don't know, Rich. It seems like you can't have it both ways. But thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Stay tuned on that Spygate thing. You might be entertained. What are your thoughts?
The thing I just love about it, when he calls in all these loons on the left with their climate change and global warming, they don't stop for like a nanosecond and just think about how stupid what he just said was. Marty, we just had a 1 in 500 year storm. That means things haven't changed much in 500 years. You know what I mean? That's a pretty stable weather environment for me.
Yeah, they said there are going to be more hurricanes. Yet we had kind of a 12-year period where we had the fewest hurricanes.
Yeah, but that didn't count. That didn't fit the narrative.
That proves. Well, it's not really global warming, it's climate change.
Right.
So if it's hot, it's climate change. If it's cold, because we did have a pretty cold spring, that's global warming too. I can't explain it. I can't explain the non-spy that was spying in the Trump, but you can't release his name because, well, there is no spying.
Right.
There was no spying, but don't release the name of the person that wasn't spying because there was no spying.
Well, and Clapper comes out and says, well, he was spying, just not on the Trump administration, even though he was embedded in the campaign.
I heard it this way. If you argue with a liberal, it's like playing chess with a pigeon. He knocks over all the pieces, craps all over the board, and then struts around like he won. That's what it's like.
Right, that's not original, but it's pretty clever.
It's pretty good, though.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Well, and anyway, just one comment about your last caller.
Yes.
If anybody out there in the vast listening audience missed any episode of the Steve Marr Show, you can just dial up Rich's show because all he does is play clips from the Steve Marr Show. So anyway, so can we just talk for a second about taking a knee?
Yeah.
Well, here's what's interesting for me. I mean, what we've established is that principle has its price. I mean, I think that is really the epitaph of the whole kneeling thing. Because kneeling was okay until it started to hurt the pocketbooks of the owners, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, from now on, you can't do that because you're killing us, guys. And it reminds me of Churchill. Churchill was at a party one time, and everybody knows the story. Propositions a woman, and she says, right? She says, Churchill, I wouldn't sleep with you for $1 million. And she says, well, ma'am, now that we know what you are, the rest is just a matter of price. And it's kind of the same thing with these football players, and the whole football thing was we established a price. Right? You're hurting us in a pocketbook. That's it. You're not taking a knee anymore. It's kind of interesting, isn't it?
I followed you, but that concerns me because I'm following you, and I don't know what that says about me.
We're tracking. We're going to bring up the whole Syria chemical thing,
prostitution
and we'll fall
analogy
off.
to the NFL, and you mix in Winston Churchill, and I throw a pigeon in there. And
I'm trying to get the whole World War II thing. You got connected with the other Dave on that. Maybe
that was good. I like that because you got the there was one battleship that was bombed, and the other one they had
Arizona, Missouri.
The Missouri, and then on the deck of the Missouri, they signed their, surrender documents, and the two are right there in Pearl Harbor, evidently.
Yeah.
So if you go to the Hawaiian island that isn't blowing up, you can still see Pearl Harbor. You'll be fine.
So how did Trump do on North Korea?
I think he's doing fine. I know it's really funny because
Did he lose the Nobel Peace Prize?
Yeah, whatever. But no, he's playing it right because you juxtapose that with the Obama administration that was so desperate to sign something with Iran that they were literally shipping cargo planes full of cash to the Ayatollahs as they yelled death to America and burn American flags. Here's more money, pallets of cash to the Iranians, desperate to have some kind of a deal. You don't got that with Trump. He's like, yeah, we're not going to stop military operations. We're not going to do anything. All of a sudden, he's blowing up his own, that's Kim Jong, bad haircut. He's blowing up his own nuclear plants and stuff like that. And Kim does want to come to the table. It just dawned on me. And I think he's doing it just right. And he's not desperate for it. He's always said, "We will see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens."
So that's the new update.
Oh, Kim is coming to the table. This is hot off the press.
I thought we were going to pull up a chair here.
No, Kim, no.
I thought we were all have to get new haircuts, man.
No. I mean, it's right because, first of all, I think their whole nuclear mountain collapsed. And so now they're blowing up tunnels to this nuclear mountain saying, see, look how peace-loving we are, we're blowing crap up. The crap already blew up. And I don't know if there wasn't some sort of special forces operation that went in there and blew that crap up. Because that's what you want your CIA doing, not spying on an opposing political campaign. Right. That's kind of what they were doing in Watergate. they broke into the Democratic office. Well, Obama's CIA, FBI, Comey, Gates, Clapper, Brennan, all of them, forget about just, they were pikers back in Nixon's day. These guys flooded spies in there electronically, were eavesdropping and everything else. I mean, it's just, I just love talking to liberals about this because they're like, well, no, they weren't spying. It wasn't a spy.
Well, how about Rabbi Hayden?
But you can't release the name of the guy that wasn't a spy because his life could be in danger because, well, he wasn't spying though, but just don't tell him that it was that guy because the non-spy who's not spying is not spying. It's collecting intelligence of
Obamacare. Nobody's talking about Obamacare. How come that is?
I just think because everyone's like, I think the market has come in. You can get, what's that, Metashare? It's good. Like call 1-800-BIBLE or something.
You know how much the government is going to spend next year on Obamacare? $700 billion.
Oh, so it's still up and running, it is?
Well, in some fashion.
They're subsidizing.
The pure subsidies direct to Obamacare is around $50 billion. But then when they changed the laws and all the states had to take on more Medicare and Medicaid, that's where the hemorrhaging is occurring.
Caller, what'd you think of that Dean? Didn't he seem kind of like bright? Wasn't it good to have him as a guest?
Hey, Marty, where do you think Obama got the money to give to Iran?
Where did Barack Obama get the money to give to Iran? From the taxpayers' pockets. That's where he got it. Next question.
Marty, you're wrong. You're completely wrong.
Okay, where did he get the money?
Why do you get?
He was a community organizer. They don't get paid a lot.
Marty, why do you get on community TV to embarrass yourself? You can actually look this stuff up.
Where did he get the money, Rich?
The money that we gave to Iran was the money that we seized when we confiscated
frozen Iranian assets when they took over our embassy back in 1979, 1980, when your boy Jimmy Carter was not respected around the world. That's what you're talking about?
Marty, it was their money. We confiscated and we held it. We owed it to them. We gave it to them. You have to be a man about this. You have to be honest and you have to admit it. Instead of standing there and taking a Republican position where your intelligence has been insulted and you really don't care about that.
Hey, Rich, how much did the Iranians pay us when they nationalized the oil assets in Iran?
No uranium's ever left this country, you dingbat. It can't leave the country. But you Republicans think it can. Why? Because you're stupid. Because you don't look things up. Right, Dave?
Was that on Steve Maher?
I don't know.
Or Bill Maher, excuse me.
Okay, so Rich, your point, if I could bring it to a close, is that the money that the Obama administration gave to Iran, the $150 billion with a B, was actually money that we seized during the Iranian Revolution when the Ayatollah Khomeini took control. And they had assets in American banks, and we seized those assets. So it was really just the repatriating of their own money. That's your point, right?
That's the exact...
Okay, then you went off on stupid Republicans and uranium and stuff like that. But point well made. Something to consider.
No, don't consider it. Look it up.
No, I'm granting you the thought. I'm not sure it was 150 billion, but listen, you did good. You insulted me. You told me not to go on TV and look stupid. I'm feeling great shame. I'm rethinking my whole life. You're doing good, Rich. You're doing good.
Well,
I got to let you go.
Yeah, well, and I screwed up. I did say the Steve Maher show. It's the Bill Maher show. For
Bill Maher.
Yeah.
No, but there's something to that. I mean, with the Iranian Revolution, we were backing the Shah. And when they took over, they did have assets in American banks, the Shah and the Iranians, and we did seize those assets, and we have held them. And I guess part of that was the deal to repatriate that.
So why were they floated in cash in a C-130 in the middle of the desert,
because
in the middle of the night,
unlike
Donald,
Donald Trump that taunts people he's negotiating with, these guys were desperate to get a deal.
Yeah.
Desperate.
So switching gears to the economy for a second. This is what's kind of interesting. Right now, there's a shortage shortage of over 225,000 truck drivers in this country, and you can earn over $80,000 a year driving a semi-truck.
Oh, easy.
And the Philly Fed Index, the new order print on the Philly Fed Index was the highest in 45 years.
Okay, hold on. The Philly
Fed.
Oh, Fed. Okay.
New order index.
Oh, okay. Great.
Which is a good forward indicator.
Right.
Highest print in 45 years. Now, there can be fluctuation month to month on that, but it's not a bad thing.
No, it's a good
To
thing.
the point of once the locomotive starts to chug,
That's right.
hard to slow it down. Average home price increase 9 to 12% across the country, except for Connecticut.
Except for
Why?
Connecticut.
Because we kind of hate the residents and we raise taxes and we do everything wrong.
But we're going to get that straightened out.
Yeah, but it's good. It's good
Governor
economy.
Mark Bowden, just get used to saying that. Governor Mark Bowden. It could be
And
good.
Attorney General Joe Markley, I hope.
No, Lieutenant Governor.
Excuse me.
Attorney General John Shaban. And Lieutenant Governor Joe Markley. He's looking good.
Joe's a star. You had him on your show. You
my
launched
show.
every political career in Connecticut right here on the show.
Success.
Except for the Navy SEAL guy. He kind of took a turn, didn't he?
Well, he waterboarded me out there, and then
He lasted pretty long. I was proud of you.
Seconds and seconds before I gave up the code.
So the polls are looking. You brought this up in the last show last
No,
week.
there's a blue wave coming. Everyone hates
It's
Trump.
a blue wave goodbye.
That's very good. Yeah, I think, I don't know. I mean, the generic poll, they say a Republican versus a Democrat was 16 points up for the Dems. And that was a few stupid, like backing MS-13 and coming out against the tax cuts, calling them crumbs, and Trump doing pretty good on the economy. And I don't know, it seems like it's now one up for the Republicans on the generic ballot.
Well, why isn't anybody switching gears? Why isn't anybody talking about? Trump accomplishes so much over the course of a day. Gigantic accomplishments are kind of missed and passed over, and we're used to it. He made that comment in the campaign. We're going to win so much you get tired of winning, right?
Yeah,
so what did he do with China this last week that nobody's even talking about? He got them to drop their trade tariffs by over 15% on cars. So all of a sudden, the U.S. is kind of competitive now in bringing in cars to the country. And in the same week, he moved to impose tariffs on importing European cars.
Yeah.
It's kind of beautiful the way he's leveling the playing field.
Yeah, well, if you want to sell a Chevy Camaro in Germany, I think you pay a 25% tariff. And if BMW wants to sell a Z3 here, I think they pay like a 2% tariff, something like that. But they do manufacture some of their cars down in South Carolina. It's a world-class factory, so you don't have to pay tariffs on that. But I think he's doing some pretty good deals.
I tend to agree. How do you think he's looking for the midterms?
I mean, it's hard to tell. There's probably going to be energy on the other side because I would say the intensity of Trump hatred on the liberal side has not dissipated. Yet with every passing victory, every passing economic plus that we're seeing, every passing crime rates going down, you're safer. You don't really hear that much about ISIS. When was the last time you saw guys getting beheaded on TV? And if anything now, and we're just learning. Hot off the press, this is live television, that the chubby guy with the bad haircut might want to come and talk things out. He's looking good. He's looking good.
You know how nervous I was coming on the show tonight because I didn't get my hair cut. You're bringing the hair thing.
I did cut my hair.
Looking
I got
good.
it cropped.
And you've shamed me into wearing a sports coat now. So
well, we
I'm
had
trying
a
to get in the
dean from
game.
an impressive
I know.
business school. We got to put our best foot
What we should have
forward.
brought up to him was, because he's a business guy, right?
Yeah.
On what happens when capitalism fails.
Well,
right?
you get Venezuela.
No, excuse me, when socialism fails, right?
Well, you get Venezuela.
Yeah, you get Venezuela.
Yeah.
And you look at Venezuela, and the cost of a haircut, while we're on haircuts,
Yes.
5 bananas and 2 eggs.
For a haircut.
That's pretty funny. Don't you think?
Yeah, I know. What's really tragic in Venezuela is they're actually attacking cows grazing in fields.
You showed
just
a
'cause
video
they wanna,
clip on that. It
Just
was
because they want to eat.
fabulous.
It's terrible. Final thought, lightning round.
Well, I am blown away at the momentum that Donald Trump has. Opinion polls have him up over 51%. Still looking for some proof that the Syrians had anything to do, that there was a chemical attack, or that the Syrians had anything to do with it. Suddenly, Syria is off the radar. And I'm feeling a lot of peace breaking out.
I'm feeling a lot of peace breaking out too. A couple, cruise missiles will cool their jets.
And a shout out to Tony.
Shout out to Tony. Tony, we love you. Keep those pictures coming. We really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. Next week, we're going to have an author on, and we're going to have a 19-year-old Republican running for the state senate. You won't want to miss that. And
If they cancel, you'll call me.
Thailand, if anyone cancels, we'll call you. Keep that blue blazer ready. Thanks a lot for joining us. We'll see you next week on the Marty Heiser Show. And thank you to Dean David Martin. And
What about me?
thank you for you. No, you appreciate it.